Nice. So this is where we stopped last time. That whenever you have a degenerate case, many energy states giving rise the same energy eigenvalue, then actually you come across in solving such type of R cross R determinant. And because of this R cross R determinant, it is not very practical to solve it. It's sometimes mathematically cumbersome, difficult to solve it. And therefore, the way out of this difficulty is actually proposed by this Dalgarno and Lewis. What they have proposed that rather than solving it directly, this R cross R determinant made up of this matrix elements H11, H12 like this, rather we can now search for some operator F which is observable, means it is a Hermitian operator, but this F should be selected in a such a way that it should commute with H0 unperturbed Hamiltonian, and it should also commute with perturbed Hamiltonian, that is H dash. So with this requirement, now we are looking for some observable F. We may not even require to know exact form for what is F, but we should know the effect of this operator F in a such a way that eventually it can help us in reducing my R cross R determinant with many of that determinant elements of that determinant will be zero. So this is the proof. I think that is what we have done last time, that when we use this operator F such that the many of this matrix elements which I have written as H alpha beta, they are coming zero. So this is of course a mathematical ease, that here instead of this R cross R determinant, if many of these elements are zero, let us say H11 0, H12 0, H13 0, and only few are left, then obviously my mathematical cumbersome mathematical problem will be quite easily solved. So with this idea, this Dalgarno and Lewis technique, now we try to apply in to the case of say hydrogen atom problem. Correct. So basically, uh, this is what we call as the Stark effect, and you know that in a Stark effect, the atomic system or molecular system is now subjected to the external electric field. Here we consider hydrogenic system, that is something having one electron in the outer orbit and there is a central positive charge. So there is a Coulombian interaction between these two charges, one at the nucleus and other the electron. And for such a hydrogenic system, we are now putting this system in a uniform external electric field. And firstly, we will see that this external uniform electric field will work as the perturbation. And once you have decided what is your perturbation, then we will develop our theory to include what is the effect of perturbation on the different energy states. When I say different energy states, means we can go with the ground state and then we see what is the changes taking place in the ground state. Then we will go for the first excited states, what is the changes, what are the changes taking place in the first excited states, like that. So we want to study the energy states, ground state, excited state, so on and so forth, for hydrogen atom problem in presence of uniform electric field. So just to see how we can develop our Hamiltonian, perturbed Hamiltonian, I have shown beside the figure for hydrogen atom. Correct? And you know that in a hydrogen simplest version of hydrogen atom, where the central positive proton, positive charge is now having the electron surrounded to it, or you can say the electron is revolving in a radius on a circular path with the radius r. So this is what I can picturize for the hydrogen atom. And now it is kept in a uniform electric field. To show uniform electric field, I have shown parallel line. And for simplicity, I assume that the electric field, as per the figure, is going from left to right. And we will see later on that this right direction we can assume as a z-axis. Correct? It's arbitrary. You can select any direction, no issue. But we can consider this direction as the z-axis, and then we will do the calculation. But question is that when you are putting the hydrogen atom in the uniform electric field, why such hydrogen atom will react to uniform electric field? What is it in a hydrogen atom that actually makes interaction with this electric field. So we need to know what kind of interaction that takes place between the hydrogen atom and this external uniform electric field. And for that, now I have also given the another view, another mental picture for the hydrogen atom. Right? Hydrogen atom, up till we always assume that central positive charge and electron is revolving in the circuit, in the circular path. Rather than assuming this in that fashion, can we also say that the hydrogen atom is there is a central positive charge and at a some distance there is an electron, and therefore this is something like your electric dipole where the two charges, positive and negative charges, are separated by some distance r, and you know that such a configuration, such a geometry of separating equal but opposite charge by some distance constitute electric dipole. So we can also say that as if your hydrogen atom behaves like an electric dipole, plus E charge minus E charge separated by distance r. And therefore, now you can also say that when you are keeping hydrogen atom in a uniform electric field, means you are keeping electric dipole in uniform electric field. And if you go back to your lower standard, then you know that the interaction between the uniform electric field with the electric dipole, that we can write as the minus P dot E. Here E, this I use for the defining electric field. You know that this P is known as the electric dipole moment. If you go back to your again lower standard, you know that this is the interaction between the uniform electric field and the electric dipole. So my H dash is nothing but P dot E. And if you remove this dot product, you can write with the cosine cos term. And you know that this R, we can also ER and cos theta, we can write as a Z. You know that in a cylindrical or in a spherical polar coordinate system, this r cos theta can be written as that. So I'll do that calculation next, but my total Hamiltonian can be written as the Hamiltonian of the hydrogen atom, that is, in absence of electric field, whatever kinetic energy plus potential energy of hydrogen atom, that will constitute H0. And you know that hydrogen atom is exactly solvable problem. So we know eigen value for hydrogen atom problem, we know eigen state for hydrogen atom problem. So this H0 is the unperturbed part of the problem, which is nothing but the Hamiltonian of the hydrogen atom in absence of electric field. When electric field is zero, it is this Hamiltonian. But whenever you switch on the electric field, whenever you keep your hydrogen atom in the electric field, this H dash term, which is nothing but the interaction of electric dipole with the electric field, that is your adding to the H0 part. So my total Hamiltonian is now is splitted into the two parts, unperturbed part of the Hamiltonian, that is the Hamiltonian of hydrogen atom, and H dash is the interaction of dipole moment with the electric charge, electric field. For a ground state of hydrogen atom, now as I said, we are going in a stepwise manner. First, we will discuss the what changes that we observe in the energy of the ground state. Then we will go for the first excited state and so on and so forth. So the ground state of hydrogen atom, if I use this notation that U100, you know that the ground state of hydrogen atom can be written with a principal quantum number n equals to 1, orbital angular quantum number L equals to 0, and magnetic quantum number or the projection of L along z direction, that is also 0. So this U100, where first letter indicates the principal quantum number n, second quantum number indicates that of the orbital angular quantum number L, and m equals to 0. So this 100 is already known. So I have this equation with me. So the ground state wave function or the ground state energy eigenstate of the hydrogen atom is already known. Of course, for hydrogen atom, Z, the charge, we can keep 1, but just for the generality, I am keeping Z as it is. But of course, for the hydrogen atom, it will be finally replaced as 1. The small a in this equation actually is defined as the Bohr radius, and its equation is something like h cut square upon me square, where h cut means h upon 2 pi, Planck's constant upon 2 pi, m is the mass of electron, and small e is the charge of the electron. So we have now hydrogen atom ground state with us, and with which now I try to use the first order correction to this ground state. And you know that for a first order correction to the ground state can be written something like h dash nn. So it is the this perturbed part of the Hamiltonian when sandwiched between this u100, Bray u100 and cat u100. That is what I have to do. Obviously, in the equation of u100, this 2 and this 2, in fact, that will cancel out. This 4 pi comes because of the azimuthal symmetry due to the 5 part. And this 2 square root 4 means 2, and 2 cancels out. Root pi and all that factor when comes and multiplies. Because of this 2 times, there is a 1 Bray u100 and cat u10 contributes to this. So obviously this factor, the normalization factor, I can write like this. And that exponential term is now coming 2 times. So we can have e raised to minus 2zr. And this, whatever I have written in the bracket, small bracket, is your h dash. Don't forget, this is the integration matrix element over the volume. And here we are doing this integration over the volume in a spherical polar coordinate system. So it is over the r coordinate, theta coordinate, and phi coordinate. So my volume element in a spherical polar coordinate will look like this: r square dr sine theta d theta d phi. In fact, now there is no need to do such calculations in spectroscopy or in such a matrix elements. Whenever you are calculating, it will be always it is good to know that what kind of parity is involved. If I just look at the expression for h dash, right? This is the bracketed term is your h dash. Small e and capital E are the constant term. Small e is the electron charge, capital E is the electric field. Cos theta, so cos is always an even function. So you know that cos, whether you write cos theta or whether you write cos minus theta, answer will be same. But there is a presence of r. In the equation for h dash, there is a r here. And you know that is r means it is a r raised to 1. So if you replace r by minus r, then the sign of h dash will change. And you know that is such a function which changes the sign by altering the coordinate sign, then it is known as the order parity function. Something like sine theta is the order function because sine minus theta is equals to minus sine theta. So that is how I can say that the parity of this h dash is odd. Now, whenever in your integration like this, you are involving your operator with order parity, then we can follow certain rules for evaluating this integration. And these rules are known as a selection rules. You can see this h dash we are evaluating is between a state Bray u100 and cat u100. So instead of writing this u100, if I write in a symbolical way, then this is something like unlm, and this you can write something like a un dash l dash m dash. So when I go from this Bray to cat, change in n, if I write as a delta n, then whenever you are considering the electric dipole interaction, don't forget here h dash is because of the electric dipole interaction with the uniform electric field, then following this rule for the parity, following this rule for the interaction, we can now decide what values are allowed values, what values for the change in quantum numbers are not allowed. So when we do this understanding, when we go through this understanding that for electric dipole interaction, you can change the value of n, the principal quantum number, arbitrarily. When you go from u100 to, let us say, you go to u200. So the change in n will be 2 minus 1, 1. You can also go with the u100 to u320. And you know that when you go to u320, then 3 and 1 means the change in n will be 2. But whenever your interaction is because of the electric dipole, then it allows you to make the change in principal quantum number arbitrarily. So you can change whatever way you want to change your n. So n can go from 1 to 2 or 1 to 5 or 1 to 11, whatever. It is always allowed. But whenever you consider the such kind of dipole interaction, then your delta L should not be changed by value 0. So different combinations you can think, and you will definitely notice that every time you can have some change in N, and correspondingly you have a change in L. But I was mentioning that if your interaction is due to electric dipole moment, then this change in L, the delta L value should never take 0 value when the operator, that is your H dash, is odd in nature. It is having odd parity, then delta L equals to 0 value is not allowed. And if you just look at in our expression, this Bray vector, Bray state has a L0 and cat also having a 0 value. That means the change in L comes out to be 0. So whenever delta L equals to 0 and your H dash is having a odd parity, then such integration will always results into 0. So because of this property of not allowing delta L to be equals to 0, it will make this integration 0. But for change in M, the magnetic quantum number, the change in M can be taken as 0. So 0 to 0 is allowed, 1 to 1 is allowed, 2 to 2 is also allowed. But because this one property, delta L condition, actually puts a restriction on this integration, and your integration comes out to be 0. So in fact, looking to the parity aspect, and parity is basically related with the symmetry of the state function. So looking to the symmetry aspect, we can prove that this integration will be 0. That means the first order correction to the ground state of a hydrogen atom when placed in a uniform electric field, this W1GS, GS stands for ground state, it comes out to be 0. So there is no first order correction to the ground state of hydrogen atom when it is placed in an external uniform electric field. But it does not mean that if first order correction is 0, means necessarily the second order correction will also be 0. It is not correct. It may happen that the first order correction can be 0, but second order correction may not be 0. And therefore, now rather than concentrating on the the first order correction, let us switch over to the second order correction. So we are still finding what is the energy correction to the ground state, but not first order, but it is the second order. And if you go back to your expression for the second order correction to the energy eigenvalues that we have obtained, you can see in this box, this W2 which I have mentioned, this W2 is something like a sigma over n h dash n m whole square and upon en minus em with a negative sign in front. So this W2, that is what I am calculating. I go to the case of second order correction to the ground state of hydrogen atom. Now, what is this? What this some sigma sign actually indicates? We know that this sigma means you are finding such n number of terms and then you are adding it. Sigma means basically you are doing the addition. And how many such terms you actually require to compute? Then you know that this prime on the sigma indicates that you have to sum over all possible values of n. Only thing is that you are not allowed to take n equals to m. Otherwise, we have already discussed, if you take n and m equal, then this denominator will be 0, will make this term diverging or infinite. So we put a restriction that n and m will not be taken. Otherwise, you can consider this n all possible values of n. And then question is that how many such possible values of n you can have? In the case of hydrogen atom, this n actually represents the principal quantum number. Right? So basically, this n and m which we are talking about, they are some kind of constant numbers. And obviously, how many such n you can think for hydrogen atom? You can take n equals to 1, n equals to 2, n equals to 3, n equals to 4. In principle, you can take n equals to infinite. So there is no as such any upper boundary, upper cutoff to n, and therefore this sigma sign which we have written, that is indicating this is the infinite sum. So this is a practically, if we look at the equation, then this is a very Herculean task that you are making a sum for infinite number of terms. And in that, this h dash nm which we have written, this h dash nm or h dash mn is something like this. H dash nn means it's like an integration. It's a volume integration. So how many times you have to make such integration? If n goes from 1 to infinite, except only one value it will not take when n equals to m. Otherwise, it will take all the values, and therefore you have to obtain now n number of times such integration. You integrate this h dash nm, then you will make the sum for infinite number of times. Then and then you will be able to calculate the ground state correction up to second order. So even if this equation looks very simple and small, but practically it is not at all possible to evaluate the second order correction to ground state because it involves infinite number of sum, it involves infinite number of such integrations. So this is practically impossible equation to be tackled. It cannot be cracked down. And therefore, now, as we were mentioning, we can take help from the Dalgarno and Lewis method that instead of making the sum or integration, which is infinite number of times appearing, if we select our new operator, observable, which is a Hermitian operator, in a such a way that whatever effect, whatever role played by H dash on operating this you can see here, whatever H dash is operating on the same effect we can obtain by operating the commutation rule between H0 and F on You can see this equation. This equality in between, this equivalence in between says that whatever effect produced by H dash the same effect is produced by this commutation rule H0F on If we find such a F, then our things will be much easy. So basically, we are now in a search of such operator F for which this equation is holding. This equation is true, such a F we are looking for. Let us assume that we get such F so that this H dash is equals to H0F And you know that this H dash when is taken with a scalar is now multiplied from the left by Bray it will produce my matrix element H dash nm. So what I'm doing in this equation, now I'm taking a scalar product from the left by and this when I multiply here in this commutation rule, don't forget commutation rule H0F means it is H0F minus FH0. So this H0F minus FH0 is now having this scalar product. And you also know that when H0 operates on because it's a Hermitian operator, so we can write H0 or H0 dagger, it is the same thing. So when this H0 operates on its left, it gives EN Same way in the second term when H0 operates on its right, it will give EM. Right? And therefore, now if you take this En and Em common, this H dash Mn matrix element can be written like this: En minus Em and the matrix element of Un and for operator F, which I will write as F and M. So this balloon which I have written in the expression for the ground state correction up to second order, this H dash Nm can be replaced by this expression. And if you replace it, then you know that this En, Em will cancel out because of this. And now what we are left with is this only H dash Mn, which was already there, this part H dash Mn. And here this H dash Nm, when I substitute like this En minus Em factor is gone. You are putting there Fmn, Fnm. So basically my W2 the second order correction to the ground state can be calculated like this. And then I put just go on putting the different values of n, but not m. So if I just go on putting the value of this n equals to 1, n equals to 2, n equals to 3, and when I do this product, when I do this calculation, what finally I will find that you are left with only one matrix element, you are left with only one term, which is h dash f, and this mm means you are now obtaining the matrix element of this h dash f product for um and um. What is the advantage in doing all this process? What we get out of this, all the procedure, that you get rid of this infinite summation. There is now no need for such infinite number of terms. You are obtaining the same result only by evaluating one time this integration. So your infinite number of integration, which we have realized that here there are infinite number of integration, infinite number of terms you have to evaluate, that is been now replaced by only one integration, equivalent integration, and you have to do the calculation for one time only. So this is the greatest advantage that one can achieve when we use this Dalgarno and Lewis method. You can circumvent, you can get rid of this infinite number of terms and replacing by only one integration. So this is the idea that your ground state corrected to the second order can be calculated with this kind of equation, only one time integration. That is what we are now using again for the case of hydrogen atom problem when placed in a uniform electric field. So for the geometry, the same figure I am drawing again. We assume that the uniform electric field is prevailing, is existing in a z direction. You can visualize your hydrogen atom as the electric dipole made up of plus E charge and minus E charge, and the separation between these two charges I can assume as a small r. At present in the figure, the angle between this electric dipole moment and the z-axis I have written as theta. So my geometry, I have shown the same thing I have written in the mathematical notations. I also know what are the ground state function for the hydrogen atom, which we have already written, which I will write as a U100. And I also know what is the ground state energy of the hydrogen atom. Right? So if I apply this unperturbed part of the hydrogen atom Hamiltonian at 0 on this 100, then I can find the ground state eigenvalue or ground state energy of the hydrogen atom. And if you just recollect your 12th standard maybe, then you know that the ground state energy functions and ground state energy can be calculated by this equation where you can substitute n equals to 1 because it's a ground state. Small a is again your Bohr radius. So I know the ground state of the hydrogen atom. I know the ground state energy of the hydrogen atom. So with which now I start doing the calculation of this W2. Don't forget, the basic idea of this Dalgarno-Lewis method is that you are looking for such a f, such an operator f, so that this equation holds. This is my fundamental equation to be used. H dash um should be equals to commutation rule between H0f and um. So the same equation with which now I am starting. You can see this H dash for it is the ground state of the hydrogen atom. So I am writing U100, and this is the commutation rule between H0f, and then it operates on the ground state of hydrogen atom problem means U10. Right? And then I start writing this right hand side first. For H0, don't forget H0 means is this term minus h cut square nebula square by 2 mu. Here mu means it is the reduced mass for this two particle system. Don't forget hydrogen atom is a two particle system. A proton at the nucleus and the electron in the orbit. So basically it is this two particle system for which we can find the reduced mass, effective mass, and with which now I substitute the value. This H0 here I can write as minus h cut square nebula square by 2m. Yes, Again, you know that in the case of proton and electron system, if proton is very heavy compared to electron, then if you find your mu, the reduced mass, something like m1 m2 upon m1 plus m2, then you will see it will be nearly equal to the mass of electron. So this minus h cut square nebula square by 2 mu term is written as minus h cut square nebula square by 2 m. M is the mass of electron. So this is the replacement of H0, F as it is, and this U10 will come and sit here. So I have written here F U100. Similarly, in the second term, this F will be as it is, and now H0 when operates on this U100, because H0 now operates on U100, then you know that when H0 operates on U100, it will give me E0 U100, and don't forget E0 means this value. So I have now information that when H0 operates on U100, it will give me E0 U100. And of course, E0 is just a number, it's constant value. So in the next step, I will write in front of it. So I have again F U10. Here also it is F U100. And on the right hand side, this term H dash U10, I am keeping as it is. Only thing is that this H dash I am writing as the I'm writing its full expression. We know that the hydrogen atom is basically a three-dimensional problem. And because of that, now, unlike the previous case of an harmonic oscillator, where we have written this nebula square type of term as only d square by dr square, now you have to write the three-dimensional expression for this nebula square. So what I have written below is the three-dimensional expression, of course, in a spherical polar coordinates, expression for the nebula square. This 1 by r square del by del r and all this, everything I have written in a square bracket is nothing but the expression for nebula square. Secondly, this blue underlined part, I am combinedly writing. You can see this minus z square by r f u00, and here also it is E0 FU00. That two term I am writing combinedly here. And both are minus, so I can take minus common. And right hand side will be carry forward as it is. Right? So basically, I have simply substituted the expression for H0, and I have used some known information that when H0 operates on U100, it gives me E0 U100. That information I have substituted, and now I'm looking for, because I don't know what is F. F I have selected only to ensure that some of the matrix elements are 0. But we have never discussed that what is the expression for F. And in fact, we don't need also. We want only the information about what is the effect of F on U100, which I don't know. What is the effect of F on U10 is not known because I don't know what is F itself. But if I look at this expression, that gives me a hint, that gives me a clue that what can be the effect of capital F operator on U100. You know that this equality, that means left side is equals to right side, indicates that if on left side, you can see everywhere it is F operates on U10, F operates on U100. On a right hand side, if you just look at, you can see that U100 is also there. So that indicates that even after operating F on U100, you are definitely going to get U100 back. So your U100 is also the eigenket of operator F. Otherwise, you will get something different. But right hand side also has a U100. Left side also is having U100. So even after operating this F on U100, you are receiving this U100 back. That means this operation of F on U10 will definitely give you the U100, that is the ground state function for the hydrogen atom back. What else you can see on the right hand side? You can see in the expression for on the right hand side, there is a R involved. So obviously my operation of F on U10 must be done in a such a way that it should result in a r on the right hand side. Not only r, even it gives you the cos theta on the right hand side. So can I say that this effect of f on u100 must have a part, must contain a something in it so that you get r dependency on right hand side. It should have something so that you can get the cos theta term on the right hand side. And therefore, I can say that operation of f on u100 can be written as f of r into cos theta. What is this small f of r function, that we will decide. But at least looking to the right hand side, I can say that the role of f while operating on u100 function gives me something like a function which depends on a r coordinate and a function which gives me like a cos theta. So I assume now that the effect of f on u100 is like fr cos theta. So here, after this square bracket, f of u100 I will write as f of r cos theta. Here in the second term also, this f of u1 f operating on a u100 I can write as a f of r cos theta. Correct? And of course, in the next step, this minus h cut square by 2m term I will take on a right hand side. So how my things will look like? This term f u100 is written as fr cos theta. So if it goes inside a square bracket, you can see in the first term there is no theta. So cos theta term I have kept constant for the first term. And only this small f of r will come and sit here. So my first term will look like this: 1 by r square del by del r square del f by del r. And cos theta is constant. But if you look at the second equation, second term, then you can see it has nothing to do with the differentiation of r. It is with respect to theta part. And therefore, I can take f of r constant for the second term. And here, this del by del theta will operate on the cos theta. Whereas in the third term, you can see it is the differentiation with respect to 5. But we have already observed that there is nothing on our right hand side involving 5. So we have not considered the 5 dependency, 5 variable in the expression for f operation on u100. So there is no phi involved, and if there is no phi involved, so this third term will contribute to 0. Correct? And for the second term, since there are no differentiation, so it is only the replacement of this operator f u100 as fr cos theta. So here in this second term, I will write only fr cos theta. So it is this replacement gives me this kind of equation. Now look at the second term. In the second term, this del by del theta operates on cos theta gives me minus sin theta. So this minus I will write in front. There is already a sin theta, so I can have now sin square theta. And this sin square theta term will be again differentiated with respect to del by del theta. And you know that whenever sin square theta is differentiated, it gives you 2 sin theta cos theta. So here in this second term, final answer for all this differentiation is 2 sin theta cos theta along with this minus sign. Correct? And obviously, it allows me to cancel out one of the sin theta also. That I will do in the next step. Similarly, if I just combine, because I am taking this minus h cut square by 2m on the other side, so in the second term, it multiplies also, so it will be 2m by h cut square which multiplies along with this minus sign, so finally it will be plus term. And if I just combine, if I collect this m e square by h cut square term, then you know that this m e square by h cut square is nothing but 1 upon the bore radius. Where my cursor is moving, you can see this m e square by h cut square means it is 1 upon bore radius. So this tick mark terms m e square by h cut square I will replace as a 1 by a. And that 2m e on the right hand side also, if I multiply small e here and divide by small e here, there also I can produce m e square by h cut square. So all this substitution simplification when I do, what finally I get is my first equation. You can see here, and the first term also, this del by del r when operates, because there are two functions. So one time when it operates on r square, it gives 2r, At that time, this del f by del r will be constant, plus r square will be constant. It will be del square f by del r square. And then this 1 by r square goes in. And when you do this calculation, you get this equation. Right? So this first two terms, which I have written in a bracket, is the results of only the r dependent part. If you just see carefully, I also changed my notation also. You can see, because substituting this fr cos theta term, now all the terms are separated. In the first term, you can see there is no theta dependency, there is no phi dependency. Everything is differentiation with respect to r, and therefore instead of del square f by del r square, now I have written d square f by dr square. Of course, cos theta is there, but it is a constant for this term. Similarly, in the second term, it was all about the theta, so I can write like this. So this is the term which I get by substituting the operation of f on u100 as fr cos theta. My result will be like this. On the right hand side, as I was mentioning, I can multiply small e and small e, divide by small e, then small e, me square by h cut square, that I will write as 1 upon a. Correct? So this is my expression. Don't forget, we are not knowing what is this operator f. Only thing which we know from this right hand side, that the expression or the effect of this f on u100 will be something like fr cos theta. Out of this, even we also don't know what is this small fr function. Only thing we now know that my small fr function will obey this relation. It is following this relation. And when I say this equation is obeyed or followed, means whatever you write for fr on a left hand side, on the left hand side, whatever expression for fr you write here should give you the right hand side. So basically, looking to this equation, my next and last question is that what a value, what a function fr can be selected, so that by putting that fr on a left hand side, I can get the right hand side. So my question of finding small fr eventually tells me what is the effect of capital F operator on u100. So I am now looking only to a problem that what a mathematical function should I select for this fr. If I know this small fr, I can put here fr into cos theta. That gives me the expression for effect of f on u100. So I'm now just looking to the mathematical expression for fr. At the same time, you all have also realized that on the right hand side, this u100, this Bray u100, cat u100, which is appearing, that also I have written. You can see this is the expression for the ground state hydrogen atom, 1 by root pi z by a 3 by 2, and this. So this u100 is also substituted. And then I'm looking for the expression for fr. Again, the method is the same. We know that right hand side requires that you should have a factor 1 by square root pi. So this f of r should also have a factor 1 by root pi. Right hand side requires that z upon a raised to 3 by 2, and if you take z equals to 1, then you require 1 upon a raised to 3 by 2. So this factor is also required. This is the exponential term, and we know that if it is the exponential term, then even if you do the differentiation either one time or two times, that exponential term will be received back. So this exponential term says that in the expression of fr should also contain exponential term. So even after doing the first order differentiation or second order differentiation, you get this exponential term. So these constant factors you require such an exponential term, and you also require a term something like small r. You can see, which I try to show with the red pen arrow. This r is also required, and therefore with this idea, looking to the expression on the right hand side, I can now say that my FRs, the small FR, can be of this nature. electric field E, capital E is required. There is a small e comes here in the denominator, so it is there. This pi term and this 1 upon a raised to 3 by 2 term I am writing together here. This exponential term I am writing here, and cos theta, because totally capital F operates on u10 that requires cos theta, so it is there. And in order to take care of this AR, now I will write a term like this. So this is known as the educational guess, or you can say the experience guess. It may not be so straightforward for beginners to decide that what can be the form, but looking to the expertise, we can say that the function fr can be written like this. Once you know the function fr multiplied by cos theta, so you definitely say it is your f of u100. Correct? And this term now I will call f when operates on a u10, that term I will call as a vm1. It is the first order correction to the state function, hydrogen atom state function. And the reason is this, because you know that if I just consider all this blue colored part, is 1 upon pi a cube whole raised to half exponential term, it is nothing but the ground state of the hydrogen atom, that is U100. So this is U100. This prefactor to U10 is the modification, is the change that has taken place because of the perturbation. You know that when your function, the ground state function, which is corresponding to the unperturbed part of the Hamiltonian, is slightly modified, we call it as a first order state function. So this factor E upon small e in a bracket AR plus half AR square cos theta, that is the modification to the ground state function. So I may call this part, the last blue part, I will call as the first order correction to the state function. And don't forget, our aim is to calculate this W2, and W2, as we have written, it is H dash F mm. So basically you are obtaining now matrix element of H dash F for Bray UM and Cat UM. So I'm writing it again in a box. It is this UM H dash F UM. But don't forget, for this F UM, you have already obtained the answer. F UM means it is F U100. You have already obtained this answer. So in fact, partly we have already done this calculation. So in the next step, next time, this FUM, which is nothing but your F00, I will use this equation and then I will find what is the matrix element UM, H dash, and whatever I put here, that I have to give it. It is only one time integration. When I do, I am able to calculate what is W. So you can see here how simply this Dalgarno and Lewis method is converting your infinite summation. This infinite summation is actually replaced by only one term, only one summation, only one integration, and how that one integration can be evaluated very easily, that we will see. So the second order correction to the ground state we will be obtaining next time by putting the value of this VM1 or by putting the value of this FU100 here. It's a very simple mathematics, only 2-3 steps we require to obtain that. Once we get the energy expression corrected for the second order to the ground state, next time we also start solving the problem of correction to the energy eigenstate for a first excited state. This is all about ground state. Next time we will see what is the mathematics, what is the outcome, what is the understanding that we obtain when we apply the Stark effect to the excited state. This is all for the ground state. Next time it will be for the first excited states. Right? So this is the very beautiful topic where actual calculation gives you the direct comparison with the experimental observations. So next time, I think you will also learn about the excited states, and you will get some additional information that what happens when the electric field is now, what effect you will see on the excited states when the system is placed in a uniform electric field. Okay? So I stop here for a while for this session. Next time we can go with the excited state and also the calculation of this. So for today, I think we can stop here. Let me stop my recording.